It's never easy reporting on your own news organization. We've done it in the past, and now we're doing it again. At issue is former TV meteorologist Mish Michaels, who was hired at WGBH News as a science reporter, even though she has views out of the mainstream about vaccines and climate change.
Even though she hasn't been on TV for 8 years, Mish Michaels is still a household name.
At Drumlin Farm in Lincoln, I'm Mish Michaels, WBZ News.
With degrees from Cornell and Harvard, Michaels is a well-respected meteorologist. And on those credentials, she was hired at WGBH News to make appearances as a science reporter on Greater Boston and 89.7.
I also began to present them stories of vaccine-damaged children.
Before she was supposed to start this week, this video surfaced of Michaels testifying at a state hearing to support a bill that would make vaccination a parental choice. Michaels testified that her one-time employer, WBZ, was not interested in stories that linked vaccines with autism.
What I was told time and time again is that there is no story, that the science is settled, that there's no reason to present stories of this nature on TV because simply these are fringe stories.
And on her website, Michaels said that natural variations have a stronger hand in climate change than humans do. After seeing those comments, Greater Boston host Jim Braude expressed concerns to management, who were already aware of Michaels' position on both vaccines and climate change. Braude persisted, and within hours the Globe reported that Michaels had been dumped, writing, "Did WGBH News hire a science reporter who doesn't believe in science?" Jim Braude is quoted as saying, "The decision was made that she is not a good fit for Greater Boston." WGBH GM Phil Rado said, in part, Mish's hiring was given a great deal of consideration. What the Globe reported was without a full understanding of the situation. Meanwhile, Mish says her positions on vaccines and climate have been unfairly portrayed. File this under "No one's a winner."
First off, a disclosure, our Beat the Press executive producer Bob Dumas was part of the hiring process and recused himself from Today's Show. And to be clear, neither I nor any of the people working on Today's Show were involved in any way in the decisions relating to Mish's employment here. But of course, we all get a paycheck from WGBH and report to Phil Rado in the end. So let me be clear again. Phil Rado and Bob Dumas and a couple of others had talked extensively to Mish Michaels and were fully aware both of the testimony at the State House and of her skeptical feelings about certain things about vaccines. They felt comfortable with her position and comfortable enough to hire her, and also said that they would not have her do anything related to vaccine coverage or health really in any way. Environment was another issue, and that was really not a problem. So the issue is, for us, is it ever compatible to have someone in the science world who has views that veer off the scientific consensus? Is it okay to have somebody? Phil Rado thought it was okay. She was pushing the envelope just enough. She is, by the way, I've talked to her extensively over the last few days. She's not a climate change denier, nor has she ever made a direct link between autism and vaccines. She's never absolutely said that, although she has admitted she's been curious about it. So that's the issue. Is it ever responsible to have somebody who doesn't have the mainstream views?
I think, look, there are a lot of people who personally have very strong views on a whole host of issues. As reporters, I have a lot of strong views. I think where it does become a problem is when your strong views become so public and you're testifying and it gets out there, it makes it a little difficult for you to report on anything even related to that issue. So science, for example, it may not be about that, but you're out there talking about other scientific things, and the audience may look at you and say, well, can I really trust this person if they have strong views on something like that? And I think when it causes the audience to pause a bit because what you have put out there publicly, then I think that's a problem.
She was a private citizen at the time. I don't know if that matters, but she wasn't working for BZ at the time.
Well, I don't really think it matters. I mean, I think that transparency is what we ought to be aiming for, and in fact, we do know what her views are. I should say we know what her views are up to a point. I don't know her. I've never spoken to her. And she claims that some of her views have been mischaracterized. I don't know about that. So let me just kind of step back a little bit and say that somebody who is reporting on science, who holds views that are way outside the scientific mainstream shouldn't be employed by a news organization to report on science. I mean, it's the widely held view that the anti-vaxxer stuff is dangerous nonsense, and whether she is recused from reporting on that or not, I don't know how you can have a science reporter who is so far off the mainstream on a really important scientific issue.
Plus, I think we had the problem here of a mixed message, because WGBH, through its premier programming, has done a definitive documentary debunking this alleged research about a connection between autism and vaccines. That was done right here, produced right here, with a lot of scientists. I mean, they went line by line with every kind of issue that has been brought up by those concerned, really allowing those people who advocated for some of those views to have a chance to speak about it and to get other scientists. I think it may be one thing, I'm going to agree with you, Dan. I think it may be one thing that we have to talk about what we mean about outside of the mainstream, different from the rest of other scientists. There are scientists that disagree with each other right now about various issues. But the question is, are you well on the outside of either one of those extremes? In the middle, there may be some good gold standard research to lead one group to say, hey, this is where I come down on it. Hey, here's where I come down on it. But if you have if you have research that has been debunked properly, that's a tough one.
Well, what all of them have said. I think, it's, but I mean, right from the start, science is evidence-based. And so to the best that we can conclude, the evidence shows vaccinations do not cause these issues with children. And to the extent that we now know that climate change, there is a major human contribution to what we're seeing as climate science. If you have someone who is to be the science reporter who holds views that clearly are not evidence-based, I think Dan is absolutely right that would call into question virtually every other position you had taken. And I think, unfortunately, the fact that she took what may have been her private views, turned them into advocacy positions, I think that's where you cross the line, and it's a disqualifying line.
I don't think it would be acceptable if she had kept these views to herself.
Well, she didn't. Yeah. She didn't.
No, and
I do want to say it was extremely unfortunate that this ended up in the Globe, because there was a denouement in the Globe before WGBH had fully, come to a conclusion about what to do about this, and it was announced rather prematurely that she had been fired, when in fact she really hadn't. She was not going to be appearing on Greater Boston, but the final decision had not been made, and that was extremely unfortunate, and unfortunate that it was a leak and probably came from within this building.
Well, journalism is messy.
All right, and let me just say that Mish has a full statement that we're going to post on our website along with this segment, so you can see that.